All right, we are live.
Rock on.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 35. It is Yulemas time again.
Skull.
That's good.
Damn.
We're going to talk about why the glass is important later. That'll be great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so to start us off, I will do the prayer real quick, and then we'll get started. Hail, Frigga, Freya, Angerbotha, great Norns, weavers of fate, laying down the strands we weave, weaving, wielding power. Sorceresses, seeresses who know many things, see the hidden ways. Now in the dark, deep in the dark, weave well for us, I pray. Hail to you, holy ones. That's the line.
That's too high. All right.
So, happy Yule.
Happy Yule. That's good stuff.
It is. So tonight, for the December episode, the Yule episode, Sarenth and I are drinking an assortment of whiskeys that I brought. We are starting off with Jameson. Let me get a little closer to the camera so people can see. Every whiskey we're drinking tonight is from the same company, and most of them are from actually the same distillery, which is the Middleton Distillery in County Cork in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, we're also drinking out of Glencairn's because this is the premier.
There we go. Oh, that's a little better. Now it's washed out.
Oh, yeah. I don't look like a vampire anymore. That's nice.
Your secret's safe with us.
Yeah.
So just to kind of give you guys a better shot of this whiskey, Jameson's standard Irish whiskey. Good stuff.
Then we've got the Redbreast 12-year, which I have had on air a couple of times.
This is the Redbreast 15-year.
Redbreast Lastua, which I'm mispronouncing. I'm great at lighting. Lastua, which is their sherry finish, effectively their 13-year. And then for the end of the night, we are drinking some of my bottle of Middleton Very Rare from 2016,
Jesus.
which we are not finishing that bottle.
Folks, I am getting spoiled tonight. Just a touch.
It's fine. So Glencairns are important. I think I've talked about this on air before, but they're kind of the premier whiskey drinking glass. The shape was designed literally by some of the leading Scotch distillers in the world, working with some of the leading glass blowers in the world to literally design this glass shape. And actually,
what does it do for the whiskey?
So it does a couple things.
And what's the difference between that and taking a shot?
I'm about to show you.
Okay.
So, basically, the shape of the glass makes it so that you are getting less of the alcohol fumes and more of the actual scent of the whiskey. And in doing so, you're also getting time for the whiskey flavors to do the same thing on your tongue. Basically, the way that it concentrates and then opens up just a bit at the end allows the flavors to actually concentrate into your nose and then therefore into your mouth, because it is absurd how much flavor is actually found in the nose. It's something like 40%.
I mean, human beings can smell petrichor.
Yeah.
So, like, the fact of the matter is that what we're attuned to smelling is things like fertility and the compounds in an object. Like, people will be like, oh, dogs are so much better. Dogs are good at certain things. We're good at certain things too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So smell that and then smell this.
Okay. This smells almost... It's much more of the alcohol smell.
Yeah. And when you do smell, keep your nose about here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the contrast is pretty distinct. So with this, I'm definitely getting like the scent of the alcohol and not as much of the oak and not as much of the other ingredients. This, I'm actually getting different scents. I'm actually picking stuff up, and I'm not sure entirely what I'm picking up because I'm not sure what's all in this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
The glass you drink out of is important. That is much more alcohol forward. Woo-hoo. The burn on that is much more distinct.
Yep. Yeah, it makes a huge difference. With that, drinking Jameson out of a shot glass, I get what I call my standard whiskey flavor. I get a little bit of grain, I get a decent amount of alcohol, I get a little bit of oak, and then a third flavor that I just associate with whiskey in general, which I don't know exactly what it is, and I couldn't tell you.
Almost a peatiness.
Not usually, because like Jameson doesn't have peat.
Okay.
But I get what you mean, like an almost smokiness to
Yeah,
it.
that's more accurate. Yeah.
With this, I'm getting, even just on the nose, I immediately get a bunch of grains, vanilla. What else am I smelling there?
So use the engineered glasses, folks.
Yeah, no shit. You can get similar effects out of a brandy snifter or any kind of tulip-shaped glass.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what you want. The Glencairn, in my opinion, does a slightly better job, but it's really kind of a lesser in degrees.
Don't worry, folks. This ties into stuff we're going to talk about later. At least in my mind.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Like, we'll find a way. Mostly I'm just like being a whiskey nerd over here because, you know. Glencairn, yes. That is, thank you, son. Glencairn.
Yep. It's
so much better.
It's a cave of Glen.
Yep.
Good shit. Ooh.
Yep. It is good stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, Yuletide. So being that it's the dark half of the year, Sarenth, tell me about the Wild Hunt.
Fuck off. So for those who don't follow my blog, Sarenth Odinson's blog, sarenth.wordpress.com, I just did a big ol' post on the Wild Hunt explaining the ties between Odin and the Wild Hunt specifically, so because it was a Patreon topic question. This is where I'm going to kind of tie the Glencairns into. Oh, that looks beautiful. I'm going to tie the Glencairns into the subject at hand. Yes. It is Rune Daddy's story time.
It is. I'm super excited.
So the Wild Hunt is something that occurs either, it just depends on your perspective, it depends on time period you're looking at. So this is the difference between taking a shot glass approach to history and taking a Glencairn approach to history. Skull.
Indeed. This is the Redbreast 12 year.
God damn, that's good.
Oh, just wait, it gets better. Oh, fuck me, that's so good.
Right? So the Wild Hunt is something that Odin in this telling puts on. And the Wild Hunt depends on where you're at in time and space in terms of who leads it. Frau Perkta, Frau Hala, various other supernatural beings and gods and spirits lead this thing. The Edel King is a folkloric figure that pops up as the leader of the Wild Hunt. And these are distinct from infernal armies, the Furious Host, and other similar, the Infernal Huntsman, which is kind of a distillation of this Wild Hunt. So there's a lot of different motifs which go along with the Wild Hunt. But the long story short is that it is a group of hunters led by some god or big supernatural figure. And in this case, it's Odin that we're talking about, or Othin. And the Wild Hunt occurs either seasonally, that is sometime around Yule, or during Yuletide, or it happens nightly. And it depends on what time period you're looking at, who you're asking, where, when, how. The problem is we don't know how far back this thing stretches. We don't really know its pedigree in terms of pre-Christianity. We have ideas, we have conjecture. My main source for this is going to be La Couteau, because he's really good at collecting lots and lots of information on the subject.
Yeah.
The
subject here being whatever fucking catches his fancy, because he's written about everything from
much.
werewolves to magic to wild hunt to house spirits to everything else. Basically, if it's
La Couteau is like he's a French folklorist. If you want to know something about folklore to do with Germanic or Norse, French, even a little bit of Scandinavian generality, Russia, that kind of thing, he's really your go-to. LECOUTEUX. Claude La Couteau, or as our lovely friend Mother Multiverse calls him, Claude Lickitung. So the wild hunt is, again, a hunt that takes place either nightly or seasonally. And what it is a redress of balance. It is a vehicle of fecundity and fertility for the land. And it is also a way to balance things spiritually and sometimes physically. The wild hunt will generally hunt either a supernatural figure, people, both, and the host of this, being Othin, in this case that I'm talking about specifically, will include masked figures that may or may not be human, the dead, Einherjar, Valkyrie, and various other supernatural figures. The wild hunt crosses the land during the nighttime and will either hunt wrongdoers, basically, or will pick people up as it passes, or both. Again, the details really depend on what time you're looking at, who the folklorist is, and what kind of axe they have to grind, because later sources are almost always Christian sermons. But they point back to older stuff, which is why La Couteau uses so many of these sermons as bases for exploring the wild hunt and its motifs. This is different from the infernal host. Infernal hosts almost always exist to drag people back to hell or drag people into hell. And the infernal hosts are cognizant with purgatory, actually, because a lot of the people that are part of the infernal host are actually paying off their debts so they can go on. The wild hunt is, if you're part of it, you're part of it. If you get taken up by it, maybe you stay permanently, or maybe it drops you off eventually. And again, the disposition of that kind of depends on the god. It kind of depends on a lot of factors. So I'm going to pause here. I need to get some of our friends out of here.
Oh, yeah, there's a couple of stink bugs running around because we're in Sarenth's basement, and that's what happens. Because it's winter time here, and the bugs like to come inside.
Lousy bastards.
You know, like you do. The wild hunt is really interesting. We're bringing up the wild hunt because it is very often either only happens during the dark half of the year, and in particular around Yuletide. There's seriously like 4 stink bugs he's picking up. Y'all give us just a few minutes here.
Die, you fuckers.
Or like said, nightly. But often, even in those cases, it is said to be, or at least implied to be. I shouldn't say said to be. It's at least implied to be kind of more dangerous or more active during the dark half of the year.
Yep.
And that's frankly been my experience with it. Like coming out of the folkloric and the historical sense into the modern, my experiences with the wild hunt are that it is active all the time.
Same.
At least at night, but is more active during the new moon, quite literally. There's a myth I need to write about the moon cycles being quite literally the activity of the hunt blocking out the moon. I got to do that at some point. I'll get to it.
The thing about the Wild Hunt too, and something that Lakuto picks up a lot because he's kind of rides de Mazel's dick a lot. And I get it because that's just the time period he came out of as a folklorist. So a lot of where he puts emphasis is third function, and third function is fertility and fecundity. The other two being the organizing principles of the universe and
Warriorship, right?
Warriorship.
Yeah. So
that's the word.
Dumazelli, for those who aren't aware, is kind of the founder of the tripartite theory for Germanic, at least.
He applied it to fucking everything.
Okay,
that's the problem with Dumazel's tripartite theory.
Yeah, is he tried to apply to everything. He tried to apply to all mythology. It works okay-ish.
It works as a frame. It never works in practice because it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
even for the cultures he specifically tries to apply it to, it doesn't fit.
Yeah. And he split gods and mythologies into basically three parts, which was kings, warriors, and farmers.
Yep.
So rulership, warriorship, and then fertility, basically. And I mean,
and then you get gods like Freyr who crosses all three of those boundaries.
Yeah, it's like that's all of them, and also
it's terribly reductive.
Yeah, that's also how kings were understood in most of that time period. Like kings were tied to the fertility of the land. That's why if you were a bad king and the harvest was bad too often,
you get sacrificed.
You get sacrificed. You get thrown in the fucking bog. Like anyway, we're not fans of Dumazelli. Like it was just it.
He's useful as a framing device. That's it. And the utility stops as soon as you take any deeper look at myth than the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Because it only applies to a surface level reading of the myths. Because once you get to Freyr as king, the theory falls apart.
Yeah.
So the Wild Hunt is a combination of living and dead.
Yeah.
And that is where the balancing aspect of it comes into, and part of why the fecundity and fertility is emphasized in Lakuto's writings, because there's a couple of passages, including a poem, a peasant song, which was recorded by a cleric, asking Woden to bring the good grains as part of the hunt as it passes over. So there's pointings to the Wild Hunt not only being a force for basically good and getting rid of the riffraff, but also for the carrying of fertility into the land from the land of the dead and from the gods of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the gods that lead the Wild Hunt have heavenly or sky associations of some kind.
Yeah. For example, Frau Perkta with the bringing of snow.
Frau Halla and the shaking of her bed.
Yeah.
Frau Perkta specifically combines an interesting motif with unbaptized children being part of her train.
Yep.
Which is not an unusual thing in regards to motifs of the Wild Hunt in general. They also kind of serve a similar function to, in my experience, the Benedati of Italy and the Tris of, and I'm going to fuck this name up, Koltreffen, I think. I'll have to look at my blog. Long story short is that a lot of these have motifs that are similar to each other, where the humans that participate are actually engaged in rebalancing or defending the land.
Mm-hmm. And actually, so the backtracking very slightly to the unbaptized baby being part of Frau Hall's hunt, this is where I disagree with Lakuto slightly in the hard distinction he draws between infernal hosts or the furious hosts and the wild hunt, because what are unbaptized babies in a Christian context, they're going to purgatory,
right?
And so that kind of hardline distinction of, well, the purgatory function, like I'm like, it's the same thing, like
right?
Which is, people can disagree, that's fine. And in the end, it's polytheism, so the answer is yes.
Yes, and
yes, and
thank you, Snow.
Right. So there's that. And like Grim, who we both are friends with on Discord.
Grim's good people.
Like for me, the Wild Hunt rides all year, And for her, the wild hunt stops after I forget when exactly, but the wild hunt stops during the light side of the year. She has a whole mythology about the swords being put down and plowshares being taken up.
And this is to say, like, the yes and thing also applies here, because one person's experience of the wild hunt as putting up its swords and taking up the plowshares is equally as valid as our interpretation of the wild hunt going all year.
Yep.
There's no contradiction here. It's their experience of the wild hunt.
Mm-hmm. And in particular, I find that my understanding complements hers as well, because I see it less as the entire hunt putting up their swords and more like the standing professional army sticks. And most of them go, right? Like the conscripts go back, and then the specific hunters stay and do training and things like that.
And if you take the notion of the furious host or the infernal host and you combine it with the motifs of the wild hunt, it makes total sense because they've served their time.
Yeah. Which is, and that's how it is for me. So,
this is where having a folkloric background is really deeply important. And again, mythology as out of whatever random book you pick up, mythology as informed by folklore and sourcing.
And lived experience.
Lived experience, yes. That's the other thing. Like, it's not just that we're talking about folklore, because we're talking about active cultists with the wild hunt. We're talking about active experiences with the wild hunt. We are, historically speaking, some of the odd people out. You don't go looking for the wild hunt, generally speaking, unless you're crazy. You're crazy, like literally crazy.
Yeah.
The people that sought out the wild hunt were looked at as mad or desperate a lot of times. Odin being our father. I mean, I'm kind of already set up, so we're good.
Yeah.
You don't have to be crazy, but it helps.
It's
like my job. So
Tora joined us.
Oh shit.
No. Hey, this is only two pagans. False advertising. Tora, I'm just going to point you to the entire chat that is full of pagans. So it's still false advertising because,
Also, are you volunteering to come on?
I mean, I have asked you if you would like to come on and left an open invitation. So
is this where the pigeon?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's a whole.
So tying this into the Year of Aun thing, again, this is where a good understanding and background in the folklore you're looking at, or at least having other people who have the education to explain this shit to you, is really important. I mean, we had Rune Hjarno Rasmussen on twice, both him and Joshua Hrathgar-Rud, who explained this to us in great detail around Grandfather Fire. Jesus fucking Christ. One of the staples they got rid of might have been a pagan. I mean, they're a waterbound sacrifice now.
I mean, you bogged them.
I bogged them. It's all good. I'm a good pagan. Just make little nooses next time for all the little stink bugs. Can I have a little Yule sacrifice of stink bugs?
No.
No?
You may not.
No. Okay.
No.
That's what happens when spells backfire. This is why you don't piss off the witches, folks. Like, don't piss Freya off. She'll turn you into a stink bug. So the Year of Aun is interesting.
Pagans in a sacrifice.
I mean,
I do have to learn how to make ritual sacrifice at some point here soon.
Oh, we'll have fun.
Yeah, that'll be a whole thing.
Mm-hmm. It's good because I've got actually 2 roosters in the chickens that I'm getting. One of them's not living. Yeah. Whichever one's the more aggressive one's going to croak. So speaking of croaking and sacrifice, the Year of Aun is a octennial celebration. That means it takes place on the 9th year, because the way that this is reckoned, because of historical, there is no like 0. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 is kind of this almost gap year kind of a thing. What this relates to, the Year of Aun the Old, is a king, a legendary king, who made a deal with Odin that he wanted to live forever. And so Odin said, "Well, you sacrifice your son every I want to say every year, and you'll get more time, or every 9 years." So he sacrifices the first son, and he gets basically a whole lifetime. Second son, he gets like 60 years. The third son, on and on and on. Every son he sacrifices, he gets less and less time, and he gets more and more old and decrepit. And as he gets more and more old and decrepit, he goes from this virile king who makes his land and people prosper by his rule to, by the time he's sacrificed almost his last son, he sacrifices 8 out of the 9. And by the time he gets to that point, he is drinking milk out of a horn. He basically has a baby bottle. He is decrepit. He's old. He can't take care of himself anymore. And he's just hanging on by a thread, and his men, having made oaths, can't kill him. So eventually the people are like, well, that's nice, but this is untenable. You're killing your own kids. This is wrong, fundamentally wrong. Kinslaying was deeply taboo. And so the people took up arms and slew Aun in a sacrifice and brought back fertility and health to the land. And the Year of Aun is a cautionary tale. It is not meant to be a celebration of this old fucker who sacrifices his own people.
Mm-hmm.
It is a cautionary tale, and celebrating the Year of Aun is intentionally meant to bring us back into balance with the land, not celebrate this billionaire-like motherfucker.
Yeah. My understanding of the way that the Year of Aun works is effectively it's this 9-year cycle where increasingly the world gets more and more disordered, and you actually see this like astrologically, like the year gets more and more disordered, more and more out of touch until the 9th year, when everything kind of snaps back into place and the cycles are correct again before, again, the cycle begins anew.
It's also important to note that this is a disconnect between the Gregorian and lunisolar calendar that was present at the time. So this disconnect is literally occurring in time as well as astrological occurrences at the same time. And there would have been separate festivals, and the celebration of the Year of Aun every 8-9 years would have happened either on Yule or God damn it. Of course I forgot the damn name of it.
You'll think of it. But yeah, so it becomes this big blowout festival on the 9th year to celebrate things coming back into order, right? And the idea, so Rune and Joshua did all the math and kind of figured out that 2023 is the Year of Aun, right? It's that 9th year mathematically. So what both Sarenth and I are doing, or at least hoping and planning to do, is starting with the Yuletide Festival this year, and then continue on into next year, because by most calculations, Yule actually would take place in early January.
Yeah. So astrologically and from a lunisolar calendar perspective, like Yuletide actually is kind of in the middle of December, and it ends in the middle of January, because these were calendrically associated with lunar cycles, not with solar cycles. You actually had to occasionally every 3 years put a week in there somewhere to correct for the imbalance, but otherwise it was almost a perfect calendar in terms of its cyclical nature, following Mani's progression through the year. But it was lunar based, and the way you reckoned days was when night fell into the next nightfall. So it's very different than what we're used to. I mean, and even our sleep patterns have drastically changed. I mean, you're going to get 8 hours of sleep a day. Yeah, maybe, but it's going to be split up with a 2-hour break period of sleep in the middle of that. Because sundown, so am I.
So starting with Yuletide this year, and then continuing into January of next year, starting the celebration, I believe we're still planning to bake a what's the word? A human-shaped loaf of bread as a effigy.
Yes, there you go.
Of Aun to be sacrificed to a fire. I believe the plan is to do that this month and then actually feed it to a fire in January. To sacrifice Aun and kind of bring the world back into order. And then basically all of next year is just crank the festivals up a notch, right? Like if you're having a party, do it just a little harder. Celebrate just a little more. Don't add jelly.
Yeah, unless you want your Aun to explode and burn your guests.
Or just look like it's bleeding all over the fire. That's,
I mean...
that's also awful if you've got like children, which you do.
I know.
Anyway,
we put a man in the fire when I was 5.
We're not doing that to your children. So.
Damn it! Let's make new memories. It'll be great.
Also, the smell will be terrible.
This is true. Cat raises a good point. The smell of burning jelly is fucking awful.
Is awful. Yeah. So let's not do that. The plan is to do that, and then just crank the festivals up a little bit. And the Year of Aun is, as envisioned by Rune and Joshua, is to be a kind of celebration and reconnecting with the land, with cycles coming back into right relationship.
Right, and so even folks who aren't necessarily heathen who celebrate, like say the Wiccan Wheel of the Year, can still incorporate the Year of Aun celebration into intentionally reconnecting with your land spirits, everything. I mean,
traumatizing children, cool. Bad smell, okay, never mind. Sarenth logic. Thanks, Al. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yo's the pour.
Ooh, this is the Lustau. Okay.
Yep.
Single pot still.
Yeah. So the Jameson is not, but all of the redbreasts are single pot still, which is kind of the most traditional Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
So
that is a different creature.
Yeah, it is. So the Jameson is 40% 80 proof. The 12-year is also 40% 80
that's
proof.
40, oh, that's 46. Okay.
This is 46%. Which is 92 proof, and then the 15-year is also 46%, which is not cask strength, but is a little stronger still. And it's significantly better.
The man's got priorities.
I mean, hey,
this is why Sarenth needs lots of supervision. Thanks, honey.
Yeah,
don't we all?
Don't we all?
I mean, true words.
They did leave us in the basement unattended.
This is true. They did. That's their fault.
Yeah.
They could have been the third pagan. So the thing about the Year of Aun, the thing about the Wild Hunt, is both of these things are balancing acts. Both of these things seek to redress imbalance. They seek to bring a kind of a full tilt to the land and to the year.
I really like to think of the Wild Hunt as a wildfire. It comes through, it burns down all that which needs to die and revitalizes the soil. The third pagan will only appear if more alcohol is needed. That
Fair.
Sounds like a challenge.
Sounds like a challenge.
And I can roll into work tomorrow whenever I want. So
I mean,
we're going to see how that goes.
If you want to bring down some more whiskey, that'd be great.
We'll see how that goes.
Whiskey necklaces. So
It's so good.
Yeah, actually, let me take a hit of this. Oh God. I times like these, I wish I could have you folks smell this. It is amazing.
Yeah. So the Lustau is finished particularly in sherry casks, and it makes a difference. Like you can smell the fruit on this one, the fruit and the vanilla on this one. The extra year also makes a difference. Oh my God.
So the 12-year had a nice burn to it. This is smooth.
Yeah.
Real smooth. So it might be an interesting thing to think about. Why now in Yuletide are all these rebalancing acts going on? So if you think about it, we just come out of Gormanath, which is Gore month, if memory serves correctly. And what that would be oriented around is literally slaughtering your animal. Gore, G-O-R, with a little acute mark above the O, is actually about slaughtering your animals and getting ready for winter. This is where you would be doing your preservation work, smoking, salting, especially salting. This is where you fill your larders. Mm-hmm. And there's a month either after this one immediately or the next one, which basically translates to marrow sucking month, because you're coming to the end of your stores and you're kind of like, all right, spring, get here, because we're starting to run the fuck out of food.
We are sucking the marrow out of the bones. Like, let's go.
We're kind of down to the. It's like,
Did you get Emily's
yeah.
last comment?
Yeah.
Do y'all see the wild hunt as crossing over a lot of different cultural boundaries, or individual cultures having their own hunts? Sorry if you.
So we didn't actually cover this.
And the answer is yes.
Yes and yes. There are individual wild hunts and there are crossovers.
Yeah. So because you got to remember that where a lot of this mythos comes from is cultures that were doing a lot of overlap, and also we don't have the individual cultures' mythos around the wild hunt. We have collections that were slammed together over time.
A lot. So you see a lot of these repeating motifs, as noted mostly by clerics who are preaching against offering sacrifice to the wild hunt.
But you do still see...
Stop giving him shit!
That's the devil. Like, I mean, you're not
That's
wrong.
That's nice, but the devil gives me shit.
Right? Like, he kept my larders full. Like, come on.
God, Father.
But you do see that this does cross a lot of cultural boundaries. Diana, actually, a Roman goddess, is said to be also one of the leaders. So you even see coming from as far south as Rome, as far north as Scandinavia. And
it depends, because is the cleric speaking about Diana, or are they using Interpretatio Romana? And that's where shit gets weird.
Yes. I personally tend to think it is likely Interpretatio,
but
I can't.
It could be both.
Because
Diana related to Artemis,
hunting,
and it would make sense.
Yeah.
With regard to the wild hunt specifically, but also the Year of Aun type celebrations, we don't fucking know.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure how this would have been celebrated. We don't even know what it would look like. Yeah. We know that it looked like a festival. We know that, at least for the Year of Aun, they tended to take place during market festivals. So either January for our calendar or March. And it depended on if it was on Uppsala or in another location.
Yeah.
Because also, Denmark and Sweden had different celebration cycles.
Yeah. It also happened during things. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh, that's it. It happened during... The
all thing.
The all thing.
Yep.
So the all thing also depended on local politics and local needs. You would have had an all thing in different times in different places, because it would have been much more easy to get people together and not kill each other in a hall during different times of the fucking year.
For those who are not familiar, an all thing is kind of a thing is the political gathering of kind of unit of the time period. And the all thing was the bigger. It was the, like, not just the people in your area getting together, but all the people from the whole, like, allied political area getting together at once to do political things.
Oh, not even necessarily politically aligned. All things were also used for courts. So if you and your neighbor had a beef, it had to wait until your next thing. And your all thing was when Gothies, that is chieftains, who may also have been ritual leaders, would get together and hash shit out between themselves, not just necessarily in terms of jarls, landowning leaders within their territories.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting point. Ronald Hutton discusses a bit of that with Deanna and the other Wild Hunt stuff in his book, The Witch.
That's interesting.
I haven't listened to this audiobook. I know.
Oops. Sorry, folks.
Good thing I didn't end the broadcast.
Hit a button. We're back. Sorry about that.
That was weird.
But I genuinely don't know how you did that.
I don't know.
But
I think
regardless.
Anyway, so Ronald Hutton discusses a bit of that. Deanna and the other Wild Hunt stuff in his book, The Witch. Interesting. Haven't read the book, but Ronald Hutton's good, folks. Ooh, this is a good question.
We're going to get to that in a second. So how does pack magic interact? Does being connected to it make you, the royal you, more susceptible to getting swept up in a hunt? We're going to get back to that later. Like, I genuinely want to get to that. One thing I did want to bring up with the hunt stuff too is specifically the Celtic Germanic divide.
Okay.
Like one way that we know for sure that this was cross-cultural is because it was also cross-language group. When we're saying Celtic and Germanic, we're not talking cultures because that's not really a thing. Right. We're talking language groups here. So Germanic being people who spoke Germanic languages like Norse or Old Norse, Old Proto-Germanic, etc. And then Celtic being people speaking Celtic languages, Gaulish,
Irish.
Irish, Old Gaelic, things like that.
So the important thing to note here is part of the issue that we're going to run into is people will say Germanic. There's no such thing. There's these like the Suebi, the Hurlaskuli. There's specific tribes that spoke German languages. And Proto-Germanic is only reconstructed because we have all these common variables within the languages that eventually became distinct from each other.
You mean we don't know what Proto-Indo-European sounded like?
We have guesses, conjecture, no. This is also a thing with Celtic languages. A lot of people like say, the Celtic peoples. There's no such fucking thing. There and even saying, oh, the Irish people. No, because just like I mentioned with the Suebi, the Hurlaskuli, etc., there were distinct tribes, and a lot of them were confederated tribes. That is, clans or different kinds of familial structures made up the ground that eventually became a tribe, recognizable as a distinct unit. There's a lot that you get mushed down when you treat Celts as all the same thing because you separate Gaulish from Irish from Manx, for instance. Mm-hmm. And there's so much variability between folklore and ideas of gods that it's not only inaccurate, it really muddies waters you don't want to muddy.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm being a little shit grin after the Proto-European comment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bugbear. It's a big problem with a lot of heathen communities who will be like, well, we're going to go back to the Proto-Germanic and specifically the Proto-Indo-European, and then we're going to compare these cultures, and they're all the same culture, really, because Indra's Thor. And it's like, no, he's fucking not.
It's not the same. But yeah. But specifically, we see. And we know that it's not just because you could argue, you would be wrong, but you could argue that it's a purely Germanic, that the Wild Hunt is a purely Germanic thing, and that the Gauls just picked it up from their Germanic neighbors. You could argue that. You'd be wrong.
You could also argue it in reverse, and you would also be wrong.
Yes. Except that we also see the Wild Hunt in the Celtic Isles, in insular Celtic cultures, right? Ireland, Scotland, Isle of Man, they have Wild Hunts.
Lakuto also makes mention, he doesn't dig into it because India is not his area of study, but India has its own variation of the Wild Hunt as well. Yeah. So these are damn near universal in terms of that wide swath of territories. And it just depends on what time period and culture you're looking at.
It's also interesting, and I'm not saying they're the same thing, but it would be interesting if I had the time to actually dig into the folklore. There are hosts riding through the skies in the Americas.
Yep.
I don't know anything about them. I'm not saying they're the same thing. Don't say I'm saying they're the same thing. I'm not that. That's not what I'm saying. But it's interesting that it is a similar motif can be seen here prior to colonization.
And Frau Halle and Frau Perkta did make their way over with the Pennsylvania Dutch, if my somewhat rusty memory on this.
They did, because part of the Uralagoa, the
Erglave.
Yep, that has Frau Hall or cognate as one of their goddesses.
Spell it up for the chat.
Yeah, that.
Erglave is a specifically Pennsylvania Dutch heathen group, and they are awesome folks.
Yeah. This bottle's giving me trouble. Please, thanks.
You listen it for me.
Thanks. I was gonna say, see, I'm not crazy. That was kind of tough. We're opening the 15 year now. And while we're doing that, I'm gonna get into how pack stuff interacts with the wild hunt, which is to say, it doesn't. So one of the packs I didn't give you nearly enough.
That's okay.
Later. Oh, thank you, Emily, for
correcting my spelling there. That's how you spell it.
Yep. Excuse me. So one of the pack spirits is quite literally hunt. Makes sense, right? Wolves, and other canids. Oh wow.
Canids. For those who didn't hear that, I heard cannons for some fucking reason.
Because I said I always say canids instead of canids because weird pronunciation differences.
Sorry, just imagining a bunch of wolves with cannons on their backs.
Oh, please, yes.
Oh shit, that's right.
Side of the hunt. And in fact, one of Frau Hall's other names is Perked Baba, and it's there. I didn't know.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Either way.
I don't know. Either way. You'll find them.
Yeah. One of those two spellings is correct.
Robert Schfeier and his group are fucking awesome.
And it's more than just that, right? It's more than just one group.
Oh, no, it's definitely more than one group. I just know Robert.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. We're Facebook friends.
Yeah.
Good people.
Yeah, so the pack stuff is really tied in, right? Like all of the hunts, at least to my knowledge, have the motif of hounds and or wolves, often both.
Horses are a big feature in most of them.
Horses are as well. But specifically with the pack stuff, like in my experience, pack spirits, not the pack spirits, but pack related spirits, if that makes sense, kind of as a distinction. Not that the pack spirits aren't tied in, but it's
Jason, those are Catholics.
The great You're not wrong. Not that the bigger pack spirits aren't tied in because it's all fractals, but that's not the point.
It's wolves all the way down.
It is. Or coyotes. Anyway, so
oh, yeah, I did it. Oh, thank you.
Okay,
awesome.
Cool. We did spell right the first time.
Yay!
And
lol, you're not wrong.
Yeah. So it's not that they're not tied in. The thing that I noticed the biggest difference of is the cosmology is different.
Gotta ride the people dick. Anyway.
I'm trying so hard to not get distracted. It's fine. The pack spirits I find cross cosmological boundaries a lot. Right?
They do.
They just show up wherever the fuck they want.
I mean, when we've done Wild Hunt Cultists, I've gotten the Earl King riding alongside Frigg, riding alongside Othin, right alongside. I want to say Tyrannus or one of the other Celtic gods.
Tyrannus would make sense, yeah. Him being a thunderer, that would make a lot of sense.
The other thing to keep in mind is that part of the reason that fertility and fecundity is said to come from these beings is also because you're getting horse piss. One of the associations with the Wild Hunt is they bring the rains because their horses are peeing.
That's that's not wrong.
And it makes sense because historically speaking, horse dick was seen as a big fertility symbol. The Volsci being one of the classic examples of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, this is smacking distance, Maleck.
I mean, yeah, it's fine. But yeah, and so there's the Wild Hunt is already this very cross-cultural.
Speaking of smacking distance,
Yeah, this very cross-cultural thing anyway, and it's all tied up in things that the pack spirits are very associated with anyway, right? The cycles of fertility and all of that.
there's enough variation that it's too simplistic and too reductionist to say it's pan-pagan, but it is shared by a lot of cultures.
It really is. And as far as like the direct connections go, I haven't seen anyone who has at least ties to the pack spirits who doesn't at least get along well with the Wild Hunt. Like everyone who's a wolf that I know, at least gets on with the Wild Hunt just fine. Even if they're not like doing direct cultists and work with the Wild Hunt, they at least get on okay.
Mm-hmm.
As far as being more susceptible to being
something really Bud Light.
God damn it. You're not wrong. The piss might taste better. I didn't say that.
I mean, you're not also not wrong.
How far in are we as far as timing?
We're about almost 50 minutes in. So this rambly bit that we've been going on about for quite a while, I think the thing about the Wild Hunt, again, that really strikes me is how much of a balancing act it actually is, because it is taking elements out of the land, out of the soil, out of place that don't serve any longer.
Mm-hmm.
Emily asks a really good question. Do you think there's a time period where more people interacted with the Wild Hunt, or do you think it was always more avoided?
We have examples of this. No,
yes,
we do. So actually, one of the earliest mentions or one of the earlier chapters in Lakuto's book mentions specifically in Frau Hall's hunt. The women of a particular village, every woman was said to every single night join Frau Hall in her hunt in their dreams.
Yep. Something that Lakuto goes on at great length in his book is the double, joining the Wild Hunt. I forgot to mention this earlier with the folklore around it, but the thing of it is that not all the masked men or masked people in the Wild Hunt necessarily are physical. A lot of them might be doubles. That is, in Old Norse, we'd call them their hammer, second skin, astral body, whatever you want to call it. This ties in very neatly with the Frau Hall's train.
Yeah, because the women were said to leave their physical bodies in their dreams in the double.
And this comports with what we know of how Sather works and how Hamfara works.
Yeah.
Hamfara being traveling in your second skin.
Yeah. And there's another, not directly related to the Wild Hunt, but tied in. So there is somewhere in Gaul, specifically on the coast, there is an account, and this ties in because in some mythologies, especially modern mythologies, surrounding the Wild Hunt is seen as collecting the restless dead and taking them to the underworld.
Yep.
That's a big thing with a lot of modern practitioners are finding that this is a repeating motif across different even traditions.
Right.
There is also an account from a Gaulish, I believe, village on the coast where certain fishermen would, like on a cycle almost, their turn would come up, and in their dreams they would be going fishing, and they would get in their boat, and their boat would be full of people, such that it was just barely above the water, so full that it was barely above the water, and they would sail, and they wouldn't have to do anything. They would just be guiding the boat, and the boat would basically sail very quickly of its own accord all the way across to for what was for them the land of the dead, which was also England, because that's how it worked.
Sorry, Snow.
Happens.
The English are undead.
And then all of these ghostly figures that they couldn't really see, but they knew were there, would get off, and the whole thing would be done in silence, and then they would turn around and come home and wake up. And it was quite literally them acting as psychopomps. And this would be lay people. This was just, I'm a fisherman in the village. It's my turn. I'm guiding the souls of the dead over to the land of the dead. And this is a not uncommon thing where we see just lay people
Yeah.
being involved in what we today might think of as deeply esoteric traditions.
So the direct answer to your question is no, but with caveats, because the wild hunt at varying times in varying places was avoided like the plague. And it kind of did, like, it's a qualified no.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't always avoided. I'm willing to bet in more pre-Christian or just post-conversion, there was probably more of an incidence of going and finding or being swept up in it and being okay. Whereas the more Christian people became, the more avoidant they were.
Yeah.
So is Hecate leading the restless dead something that could be related to the wild hunt motif? Possibly. I don't know enough about that to say for sure, but it shares just the motif of the restless dead walking with a god or goddess in that fashion strikes close enough to Frau Perkta and Frau Hala and even some of the Odin wild hunt that I'm willing to say maybe some crossover.
Yeah, especially with Hecate's association with
hounds,
and with torches.
Yep. Hounds, torches. Yep.
Yeah, no, that
kind of tracks actually.
If it's not the same thing, it's at least in the same ballpark.
Kissing cousins, yeah.
Like we're getting there. Oh no, what did Melkor say?
Don't tell me these things like being the rando citizen. I don't want extra work, lol. I mean,
I have threatened multiple times to teach you journey work.
Those are famous last words at Melkor. Yeah, I mean they are famous last words. Like, the thing is that just because I'm a professional spirit worker doesn't mean that the esoteric experiences I have are unavailable to anybody else. Any jackass can go and pick up the runes and have a deeply profound spiritual experience and get initiated, and then boom, you're working with runes. The only reason that I have the expertise I do is because I've done the initiation work and I've done 17 years worth of work with the runes. Likewise, any poor sap can get picked up by the wild hunt, and congratulations, you're part of the train now.
Yeah. Well, and that's why. So
this is why people would fucking avoid it.
That too. But like one of the big things, the reasons that I am very careful with what I say about the pack spirits is because if I say the wrong thing and you dive after that, if you follow that train, they might just initiate you because you're not allowed to know until you're initiated. And well, you started knowing, so you're going to get initiated now. And that ain't fun.
No, and the thing with initiations and being brought into a mystery like the wild hunt is sometimes you are literally swept up by it. My experience with Odin was much like that. I didn't seek Odin out. He came and got me. I just got a horrible image in my mind of an otherworldly Congo line. You're not wrong. I mean, to a certain degree, they kind of are. Especially because depending on the vision of the wild hunt you're looking at, some folks actually saw mounted knights. Oh, hell yeah. And they're caretakers. This was especially true of people like in the infernal hosts or the infernal armies, where they would have knights who were attended by squires and pages and so on. So, god damn, that's pretty. Love the dovetailing on the wood.
It is really nice. So
look at this fucking thing.
The inside of the box is just beautiful, and there's a little piece that comes out that holds it in place. Oh, there you go.
So like, check the dovetailing out on this. I love this shit. I'm a huge nerd for good joinery. Look at that shit. My God,
it is really cool. And this is the bottle. This is the 2016 specifically. The bottle and the box change every year. Because Middleton Very Rare is produced every year, and every year is very different in very limited batches.
Actually, that kind of makes me think about the wild hunt is that your experience of it might be Jameson, and it might be a Middleton. Likewise, any spiritual phenomena you can point to might be a Jameson or might be a Middleton. And the quality of your spiritual experience may not necessarily have anything to do with your personal taste. It has to do with the refinement. It has to do with the work. It has to do with the stuff that leads you into that experience.
Finish the last drag for me.
Oh, absolutely. Hang on.
I should have done that too, but that's fine. And actually, do you mind if I get a sip of water real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So much of what we're talking about on this show with the Wild Hunt and the Year of Aun is about personal experience, personal.
2 drops of water, it's fine.
Oh, okay, you're good.
Yeah.
Has to do with.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Just to really compare that difference.
Oh.
Also, we can pour some out. Yeah, that's also a good idea.
Offering.
Yep. Everybody wants someone to bring out the good whiskey.
So, as long as it's not horse piss. I mean, you do you.
Yeah.
Or the horse. I mean, no shade or locate devotees. I'm gonna get shit for that later.
You are. It'll be great.
Anyway, so the thing about a lot of our experiences and our understanding and everything else with the Year of Aun, with the Wild Hunt, is
Thank you.
they are our own experiences as filtered through the cultural, educational, and other lenses that we're experiencing them with. This is also incidentally why I like it when folks who have no background in heathenry come and have a spiritual experience and are like, hey, so this thing happened to me. What the fuck was this? And it turns out they're having an experience with the runes or with Othin, and they're getting their heads kicked in for the first time. And it's a dynamic thing where you can recognize it because you've got the background. They can't, but they're also having a raw, almost pure experience of the thing where you're having it filtered through your, I mean, granted, everybody's having their experiences filtered through their life experiences, their orlog, their weird, etc. But to a certain degree, sometimes coming at it without a whole lot of background is easier to experience and just understand what you're experiencing than it is to have it filtered through all of this background information. Then again, some of this background information might just save your ass. So,
yeah, do the comparison.
There is no comparison. Holy fuck.
So it should be noted a couple things. One, the
alcohol's way more forward on that. Ooh.
Yeah. Even still though, I got barely any alcohol. Like you notice it there, but it's barely there. Here, it's nothing.
No,
I wouldn't tell you that was alcoholic, except that I know that it is. So Middleton Very Rare is not single pot still. It's actually a blended whiskey. It's put together every year by their master distiller from whatever whiskeys he wants to, basically. It's also 40%, or at least this year is 40%. So it's a little lower ABV than some of the other whiskeys that we had tonight. And it's not a single pot still, which all of the Redbreasts were. But you almost couldn't tell because most of the whiskeys it's blended from are going to be single pot stills.
Also, as a simple aside and kind of funny, it's not just horse piss because there's a lot of hounds and a lot of dead people.
Well, and it's not just piss.
And it's not just piss.
That's, fertility is a thing.
Fertility. Nom nom.
Anyways, cheers.
Cheers. Skull. Oh my God. That is so good.
Seriously, especially in the Glencairn, you don't taste alcohol.
No.
It's a 40% alcohol thing. And you don't taste it. It's
like I said earlier, this produces alcohol forward. This you actually get the taste.
Fine. Oh It's my favorite whiskey for a reason.
I keep going back to the fisherman because being chosen every few years, and I think a modern way of thinking about would be jury duty. I just stopped hanging with you guys. I got to keep getting homework. I mean, you're not fucking wrong.
Yeah.
Really glad y'all are in the basement. Actually, I'm going to hang on to the rest of this. I'm going to let her have ahead of this.
Do it. I'm not. I'm drinking mine because I'm selfish. I say as I'm sharing my whiskey, but
Right.
it's my glass. I want it.
So I think, again, the big takeaway that I really want to emphasize with the Year of Aun and with the Wild Hunt is these are rebalancing rituals. These are rebalancing acts. These are rebalancing occurrences. Not even necessarily rituals. They are just occurrences that happen. They're necessary because you get so far out of whack, especially when you're talking about the Year of Aun, that a realignment is necessary.
Yeah.
I think it's, especially because we live in a capitalist hellscape, it really brings to mind about every 8 to 10 years how we have another economic crash or another economic crisis. And I'm sure that wasn't the intent for the original Year of Aun, but it is almost scary how close we are to a market adjustment.
Yeah.
With the goings on in the real estate bubble that's currently bursting right now, with BlackRock backing off $136 billion or something like that.
Yeah.
So even on an economic scale for our country, I can see the Year of Aun's realignment playing in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And again, it's that rebalancing, that coming back into alignment, which is the core focus of a lot of these occurrences. The Wild Hunt is bringing the land back into fertility and fecundity, bringing the people into fertility and fecundity. Yeah. The case of the fisherman, it is bringing the fish.
Yeah.
I mean, these share a lot of motifs with a lot of spirit workers across the globe, where you'd go in spirit form to rebalance or to redress or to bring back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point, Kat. Like, we can help you with said homework. Like, that's the thing, is like, you're not alone in this. And if you do get homework and you're like, I'm out of my depth, what the fuck is this? You can hit us up. You can hit either one of us up. You can hit people in the community up. Like, this is why we gather in community.
Also, you're within walking distance of me. Like, that's fine. We'll figure it out.
Right.
I
keep forgetting Melkor's that close.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll figure that out. Yeah, it's quite literally a death and rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, likewise with initiation, likewise with the Year of Aun, likewise with Yuletide itself. Absolutely. And I think that for me is part of why I enjoy so much of this time of year. I have friends who have seasonal affective disorder, and my heart really does go out for them. But I love this time of year, partly because it's one of the few times where my body feels comfy because I'm fucking hot all the time.
I'm both, because I tend to burn pretty hot and also have not severe but mild seasonal affective, and it's like,
that's rough.
Yeah, so it's like I'm finally comfortable and not sweating,
but
also,
where's the sun?
Yeah, vitamin D, please. Let me just. I seriously, I'm taking vitamin D every night now.
Legit. No, I'm gonna stave that shit off.
Yeah, and it's helping. So that's good and important. Also, the whole thing. I stole this from Kinga, who we had on last year about this time.
Mm-hmm.
But Yuletide is light in the dark, warmth in the cold.
That is a fucking great line.
It is sharing these things with each other because we're all we've got.
Right.
No one's coming to save us. We're all we've got.
Right. And I mean, the thing is, I especially say this with the Year of Aun, the old man is not going to unfuck the situations. Up to the people to do it.
Yeah. God, I've got so much myth writing to do. God damn it. That's going to be a thing. Yeah, blog's going to get probably hides under all the blankets. I moved here over 17 years ago and still haven't adjusted.
That's legit.
Yeah, I know.
That's legit.
It's funny. Yeah, blog's going to get busy here soon because I've
Mhm.
got
So
seriously
much
like
to do.
a half a dozen myths that are just beating down the
Better
door.
you than me.
Yeah.
It's okay. You gave me that community writing assignment, you fucker.
Yeah.
So as we head into the Yuletide, as we head into the seasons of celebration, hold each other close, hold each other warmly, take care of one another, take care of yourselves. If you need to take time out for you, take time out for you. For so many beings, this is a time of rest. And if you need that rest, or if you need to get up and get active, whatever you need to do to rebalance yourself, because this is a time, I sincerely believe this is a time for addressing imbalances. We've got this Yuletide, and then in February, we've got the Charming of the Plow, which, because the ground's still frozen, there ain't no fucking way we're actually plowing anything. But I take that time as a tool preparation, sharpening your tools and getting ready for the new harvest, new year. This is the time where, if there are things in your life that need to go, if there are things that you need to bring in, if there's a last minute preps that you need to do before the dark of the year really smacks you in the face, do it now. Do it now, and take your time for you, because there's no hurry here. There's just the certainty that winter is here. This is the Vetter half of the year. Sumar is another 6 months away, and there's work to be done yet to take care of you and yours. And even if it's small, subtle things, whether it's getting that special lamp you need so you can make it through the dark times, or getting the vitamin D supplements, or lighting a sacred fire in the new year, or coming together in community and celebrating, whatever you folks need to do. I sincerely pray and hope that this Yuletide is a beautiful and wonderful time for all of us. That it is a time where, when I say Vestu Heil, what I'm saying is, may you be whole, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be holy. I am using Heil or hail in all of those functions all at once. So, Vestu Heil, folks.
Yep. And reach out to your community. If you're listening to this podcast, that means that you are welcome on our Discord.
Yep.
Assuming you're not a Nazi.
If you're a Nazi or a turf, you can fuck off.
But
Get into the sun.
But aside from that, you're welcome on our Discord. And
Yep.
If online community is all you got,
there's nothing wrong with only having online community.
Yep.
Online community has gotten me through some really fucking tough times.
Yeah. And you do what you can with what you have, and reach out. It's not just light in the dark, warmth in the cold. It's sharing it.
Yep.
So reach out.
Yep.
We're always around. We're always happy to chat. So
yeah, I think if anything, the Wild Hunt and the Year of Aun speak to the collective, speak to the communal, because Aun doesn't die until the community raises up and kills him.
Yeah.
The Wild Hunt is a collective.
Yeah. It's not a single individual. It's the hunt. It's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. So take care of each other. Be warm. If you want to join us for the after party, if you want to join us in our Discord, feel free. And we will see you then.
Alrighty. Thanks, folks. And have a blessed one.
As well.
Nope.
Okay, and the broadcast.
There we go.
There we go.
All right.